Hello there, I'm LRJ Chess, back with another chess lesson. But today, I think I'm forgetting something. Happy Halloween! But we still have a chess lesson to do, even though it is a holiday. So let me get rid of these decorations over here. Let's just get them out of the way. And let's focus on the spooky twist for the lesson that I have for you today. I hope you're prepared because we're gonna dive right in. In the last video, I told you that we'd be moving on to look at popular opening variations. But we're actually gonna do that next video. This one is special because it's on Halloween. So what do you think we're gonna look at on Halloween? Well, the Halloween Gambit, of course. And since we just finished talking about opening sacrifices in the last video, this seems perfectly fitting to go right here. Now hold on. Did you think that I was going to show you how to play the Halloween Gambit? No. Absolutely not. Now this surely bucks the trend of online chess education, don't you think? Anywhere you look, you can find so many videos online of opening traps or gambits, whether you go to YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, really anywhere you want to look. Sure, these videos are popular and they get thousands of views, but there's just one problem. The opening traps are bad. They just don't work against good players. In almost every video about an opening trap, the defending side could have played much better and come out on top instead of losing the game really quickly. You'll always see comments like, well, what if my opponent actually knew how to play chess? Now, while these do seem a little mean at first, there is a truth in them. Videos that show you how to checkmate in 8 moves or win a queen in 10 moves almost always require the defending side to play a string of terrible moves. This won't happen if you're playing good players. This will only happen if you're playing an absolute beginner. Now, if you're here, that means you want to improve your chess. And if you want to improve your chess, you'll be wanting to play against stronger players. As you get stronger, you'll play stronger and stronger players as well. That will make you a better player. The thing is, these traps, they just won't work against strong players. Those people will figure out what to do, they will punish you for your mistakes, they will take over and win the game. I don't want that to happen to you. And the best thing is, if you follow the opening strategies that I've outlined in my past few videos, these traps won't have any effect against you. You won't fall for the traps. That's exactly what I want to have happen. Now, if you've been listening closely, you might have heard that I said almost all. There are some opening traps and opening gambits that are good. I mean, in the last video on pawn sacrifices and those review games, we saw the Evans Gambit. This was one where White sacrificed material in the beginning. He played a gambit, but it actually came with a purpose. And that purpose gave White an amazing position. And it's actually a good opening. So while I do think a lot of these traps and gambits are bad, there are definitely some that are really good. I'll be sure to highlight them throughout future videos. But for now, I thought it would be great to start a collection of videos reviewing these so-called winning traps and gambits to show you how to refute them and win the games if your opponents ever play them. If you're learning chess the LRJ Chess way, I want to make sure that you never fall victim to any of these traps. So that's why today we're going to start with the dangerous and aggressive Halloween Gambit. Many players have faced this gambit, yet few have left the battlefield unscathed. One wrong move is all it takes for you to get checkmated within 15 moves or suffer massive material loss. But there's one silver lining as well. If you know how to defend and refute this gambit, you could exit the opening up a piece. Doesn't that sound great? No losing early, extra material, you'll surely go on to win the game. The lines are complicated and you'll have to study them a lot, but I assure you, I know you can do it. Let's jump into the lines. All right, so the Halloween Gambit starts with a regular opening. White plays e4, black plays e5, knight f3, knight c6, And now instead of the regular bishop c4 that we usually look at, white plays the move knight c3. This is called the four knights defense after black plays knight f6, aptly named because all four knights have moved out into the center. Normally what would happen here is both sides would develop their bishop, castle on the king side, and then continue with a regular game. But in the Halloween Gambit, white decides to sacrifice his knight and play knight takes e5. Now this just looks crazy on the first glance. Black can capture this knight, and suddenly, after only 4 moves, he's winning by a knight to a pawn. But here's the reason behind white's sacrifice. White follows up with d4, controlling the center and attacking the knight on e5, and now black has a choice. His knight can go to 3 squares safely: g6, g4, and c6. Knight g6 will be the move that we will focus on because I think it is the best. If black plays knight g4, first of all, he's moving his knight into the enemy territory far too early in the game, and it's going to easily get attacked and pushed back. So after knight e to g4, white can play h3, force the knight back to h6. The bishop can take and destroy the pawn structure. Now if the black king will ever castle on the king side, he will be faced with an open g file staring directly at his king. But white's not done yet. They will continue with e5, pushing the knight back even further. Notice how all of these squares are defended by white pieces, so black will have to retreat his knight to g8. And then white will play bishop to c4. It's important to note that black is still winning in material here, but if we take a look at black's position, he has 0 pieces developed, his kingside pawn structure is already ruined, and white has full control over the center and 2 pieces developed. This might still be okay for black if you play perfectly, but that's going to be really hard to do, especially in a position like this. I fear that black will get checkmated or lose material quite easily. Because of this, we're not going to play knight e to g4. Back here, we have knight g6 and knight c6 left as options. Knight c6 looks like a normal move because it gets the knight out of the attack and also keeps it controlling the center. However, this invites white to continue pushing his pawns down the board and attack our knights. What this means is that if you retreat, once again, you're still up material, but black has nothing developed, and white has 2 pawns far advanced in the center. This looks really bad. If instead the black knight goes back into the center, once again, it invites more pawn moves to control the center and attack the knights at the same time. So all of these pawn moves, even though there are a lot of them, are gaining tempo because they are attacking enemy pieces and forcing them to move. And at this point, after an interesting move d6 and pawn takes, we see the purpose of white's plan. Both sides do have 1 piece developed, but white has an easy time getting more pieces into the game, like with bishop c4 and queen e2 check. At the same time, white could even consider playing a move like knight to b5, which would threaten knight c7 check. And at the moment, the black king has no safe squares, so that would win a queen. This looks really bad for black. That's why when we go all the way back here, I don't think knight c6 is good either, so we're left with knight to g6. The first thing about this move is that this knight cannot be attacked again. So the knight is finally on a square safe from any threats. That's a good thing, because that means we can keep him developed and in the game. White will most likely continue with e5, forcing our knight to retreat, and then play bishop c4. Here is a very important point in the Halloween Gambit. There have been many moves that black has tried in this position, such as bishop to b4, developing the bishop, pawn to d6, trying to attack the white center, and even knight e7 and knight h6, just trying to get this knight out into the game again. However, I think there is one move that is much better. It's the move d5. Now on first glance, this move might look really weird, because it seems like white can simply capture this pawn for free. We can't take the bishop because it's guarded by the knight. So what's the point of sacrificing this pawn for what looks like really nothing in return? Well, to see that, let's take a look at the other lines that are popular, and then maybe it'll become more apparent. If black plays the move bishop to b4, white will most likely play queen to f3, simply developing another piece and threatening checkmate on f7. Let's say black captures this knight, it's a check, so white has to respond to it, and then maybe queen to e7. This defends against the checkmate threat, but it's going to be very difficult for the black pieces to find a home. White might even play this interesting h4 move, either threatening h5 to force the black knight to move away, or even bishop to g5, attacking the queen, which is defending the f7 pawn. The greatest thing is that this pawn is immune from being captured. Even though black has two pieces looking at it, he can't play knight takes h4 because white would simply capture the knight, and if his rook gets taken, black would get checkmated in 2 moves. The game is already over. So what that means is that this variation doesn't look all that great for black. His pieces can't come into the game fast enough to defend. On d6 instead of d5, we face a similar issue with queen to f3, and the computer recommends the move f5, and then after castles, c6. The computer insists that black is better in this position, but if we just take a look at it, it seems really difficult for that to be true. Now, you should know that the computer, or the engine in this case, is probably 3,000 rated and better than any human player, and it's also calculated multiple variations far past 20 moves or even 30 moves deep. So it's determined that black is better in all the variations, which is why it recommended this line. However, it does require black to play absolutely perfectly, and that seems really difficult when black's king is still stuck in the center, he has 1 piece developed, and white already has 3 developed pieces and will play rook to e1 and e takes d6 on future moves. So this directly violates opening strategies that we've learned in past videos, so it will not be recommended. So it turns out the issues with other variations is that black's pieces just can't come into the game fast enough. That's the purpose behind d5. This move opens up the queen and opens up the bishop to get into the game. Now, since black is up material, he needs to get his pieces into the game quickly. If the knight captures the pawn on d5, then black would play bishop to e6, developing a piece and essentially forcing some trades, because with 2 pieces attacking the knight and only 1 piece defending, black is threatening to win a 2nd piece. So the knight has to move, black would take the bishop, and he's just succeeded in getting rid of one of white's most powerful minor pieces. This would be a success for black. That's why the bishop has to capture the pawn. But now, black plays the move c6. This is played to stop the bishop from attacking the b7 square, because we would like to play bishop to e6 in some variations, but this might as well just get our pawn taken for free, and that's not going to look good. So that's why c6 is played, to force the bishop to move, and then later on we can play bishop to e6 safely. Black first starts with bishop to b4, pinning the knight to the king, and forcing an exchange of 1 pair of minor pieces. The more attacking pieces that black can remove from the board, the better. White castles, black plays bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and now bishop to e6. This will stop any funny business against the pawn on f7, so there will no longer be any checkmate threats. White plays the move f4. The threat is f5, forking the bishop and the knight. Now there are two ways for black to stop this threat. The first is knight g to e7, which develops a piece and guards the f5 square. While this may look really good on the first glance, this runs into an issue with the move g4. Even though white is moving pawns in front of his king, he's renewing the threat of f5, and it starts to look really dangerous because black isn't developed enough to attack the white king. We don't want this to happen, so instead of playing knight e7, we'll play queen d7. This does develop a piece. It also protects the bishop again, just in case, and it adds an extra defender to the f5 square, but also the g4 square. So now white can't play f5 or g4. So this is a good move for black. White responds with c4, his idea now being to play d5 and try to attack the black bishop and gain even more control over the center. But we have an easy way to stop that with knight to e7, which also develops a piece. I'm ending the line here because white doesn't have any clear way to threaten our pieces at the moment, while black can follow up by putting his rook on d8 to attack the center and also castle to get his king to safety. While it may look like white has an impressive pawn center, just remember that black is still up a piece. I think that's going to matter a lot more, and I think if you can play the variation like this and get to this position or something very similar, you'll have a very good chance at winning the game and refuting the Halloween Gambit. Hey there again. We're back here. After finishing those long and confusing lines, I wanted to take a break and do a little bit of review. So looking at those variations, I thought there were two pretty interesting points. The first one was at the very beginning. We saw black make a ton of knight moves without developing their other pieces. Was this a mistake? The answer is actually no. Now you may be thinking, why is that the case? Black made multiple knight moves over and over and over again and didn't develop his other pieces. But the point is, his knight moves had a purpose. They were justified. The reason why is because white sacrificed material first, so black moved his knight again to take a piece. So he gained material. On the moves that followed, white proceeded to attack the knight again, and continue attacking the enemy pieces, so the black knights had to retreat. Now, while black is moving his knights multiple times in the game, he's protecting his pieces, and he's also taking material. So with these moves of the same pieces, black won material and saved his own pieces. I think those are justifiable reasons. Secondly, there was one unusual move when black played d5. If you recall, black played d5, white captured the pawn, black played c6 to attack the bishop, and the bishop retreated to safety. What it looked like there is black gave away a pawn for nothing. But there was actually a really important underlying reason why d5 is the best move there. Giving away that pawn is actually the best thing that black can do, and it's the thing that saves his position and refutes this gambit. Here's the big difference. Normally in these trap videos or gambit videos that you'll see, the player who loses is way too greedy. They capture material left and right, they neglect their development, and they don't care about their king's safety. This, of course, leads to a destructive end to their game very quickly. If you remember how those two games in the last video finished, with Morphy ending the game within 20 moves, and Damaso ending the game within 15 moves, then you sure know something went wrong for both of the losing sides. And in those cases, they were too materialistic. They were too greedy. So jumping back to this Halloween Gambit example, the purpose of d5, even though it does give up a pawn, was to be able to open up lines of your queen and your bishop to get into the game and help with the defense. The most important thing here is that black is already up a minor piece. Giving away a pawn to activate your pieces and help defend your king doesn't really seem like that much of a concession. And really, that's all it takes for black to have a good chance at refuting this gambit. And best of all, at the end of this variation, we saw that black was able to coordinate his minor pieces and prepare to get his king castled to safety. Now yes, white does have an impressive pawn center with pawns on f4, e5, d4, and c4, but the thing to remember is just that white's still down a piece. His central control will fade throughout the game, but as long as black doesn't blunder, he's going to be up a piece throughout the game. I think that's a really important point, and that's something that will help you win a game if your opponent ever plays the Halloween. You'll just get through the opening, avoid the traps, and have an extra knight. I think that's pretty good. So that concludes my thoughts on the refutation of the Halloween Gambit, and I just have one more question for you all. What kind of opening, trap, or gambit would you like to see be refuted next? If there are any that you have struggled with in the past, feel free to drop them down below in the comments and I'll prioritize those first. Just let me know and I'll get some more videos out in this collection. Well, with that said, we've gotten through this short lesson. I think it's time for you to put on your costume, go collect some candy, and have a happy Halloween. I'm LRJ Chess, signing off with a checkmate.